Good morning, afternoon, and evening, based on the geography you are in. Welcome everyone to this panel discussion on the future of management education, online programs, that combine the best of both worlds. I'm Ankit. I'm your host for this discussion. A quick brief about me. I head the product strategy for Simplilearn and have been associated with Simplilearn for almost 3 years. I've been a product guy throughout my career of over a decade, and we have an eminent panel today among us. I'll actually, there is a sizable audience that's there, so thank you for each one of you for joining us. Let me introduce you to the panel. So I'll start off with Professor Jagdish Sheth, a Padma Bhushan awardee, writer of multiple books and hundreds of research papers. Professor Jagdish Sheth is a renowned scholar and internationally recognized thought leader. Welcome, Professor. Pleasure to have you here.
Yeah.
We would soon be joined by Professor Anil, but I'll move on to Professor Atish, who has held various leadership positions in leading institutes of India. Director at IMT Ghaziabad, Dean Micah Ahmedabad, and as a deputy director at SPJ in Mumbai. He's currently serving as a director for JAXOM. Pleasure to have you here, sir. I will pull out the agenda for today. We will start off by knowing the audience first and then cover the three areas impacting the future of management education. Then we move on to the JAXOM PGDM program and its key features and would cover the Q&A at the last. During the discussion, you may post your questions on the chat. We will try to pick them up either during the discussion or we will cover them towards the end. So let's get started. To know more about the audience, we have prepared a very small poll for all of you. Stuart, can you pull the poll questions for the audience, please? We'll give it only maybe the 30-second time limit. We have 20 seconds elapsed. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So we have the results. Do we have the? Yeah. So largely, I see a mixed bag. There are approximately 20% students who are from 0 to 2 years, and then the rest of them are split across, a 2 to 5, 5 to 10, and there is a sizable audience for more than 10-year experience as well. Good, mixed bag that we have here. I would, like to start with one broad question to our panel. And that is, how is learning or upskilling changing for the management professionals? And I'll start off with Professor Jagdish. Professor, how is learning and upskilling changing for the management professional now?
I think it is changing dramatically, almost an exponential level rather than a linear level, and it's because of three factors. The first and the most important factor is that the half-life of knowledge across all disciplines is declining very rapidly. So if you go to astronomy, with the discovery of new galaxies, they are revising their thinking about what the laws of astronomy are all about. If you go about the civilizations and dating the civilizations, the evolution of the human race is changing dramatically. Every month, new discovery or something is changing. Even basic laws in physics that we thought were invariant, there is no change, such as relativity theory by, for example, Einstein is being questioned now, and people are looking at more than what his thinking was. It is happening in definitely computer science with the software. Half-life of software or knowledge in software is about 18 months and declining. Now, I studied, if you remember, my days were COBOL and Fortran language. Okay, that's like 60 years ago. I lost track of C++, and today C++ is an ancient language. People are talking about Python, and I don't know what Python means or how it spells. That's the change. Management education is no exception. In fact, we are finding that management education is also rapidly declining. New concepts are coming. Some of the old concepts are obsolete. and the half-life of management knowledge may be as low as 18 months to 24 months. So when we have a 2-year PGDM program, by the time the students have graduated, what they learned is supplemented by something else. I mean, I never studied TQM, for example, total quality management. Today, that'll be considered an ancient language. Today, everything is learning about AI, artificial intelligence, learning about blockchain. I'm learning about blockchain myself, and it's exciting. But, I never studied that myself. I never taught it. So that's clearly one factor. The second factor is technology itself. Technology is forcing all of us to upskill ourselves. It's absolutely critical that we all have to upskill because, again, take an analog from some other industry. So if you take today's automobile mechanic, automobiles are all computer systems. In fact, a car like Tesla is basically what I call a large mobile telephone. It has primarily nothing but a tracking mechanism, and it can drive by itself, just like my mobile phone, essentially. And so given that kind of a change, the mechanic is obsolete if he only knows how to change oil in a filter, which used to be the old mechanical product. Products are getting so smart with embedded technology by digital technology, basically, display control mechanisms or storage in some fashion. That is making all of us upskill. That mechanic has to learn how to use a computer diagnostic tool. That is true of medical doctors, by the way. That is true of professors in the class now, even in management. We thought we can get away with textbooks typically and read those messages. Now, again, I will date myself. I mean, I started with a black chalkboard, okay? With a chalkboard. And that was my security blanket. I still remember the days when I would rush to the chalkboard and write things. That's gone. Then I migrated myself into transparencies. You remember transparencies? CM company made those in the projectors. Now everybody's into PowerPoint, but today PowerPoint becomes obsolete altogether. So the pedagogy as well as the content in management is changing dramatically. Technology is a major, major accelerator of change. Third factor is globalization. With social media and Google search, today, knowledge is very much, it's not like you have a knowledge created at one time in some advanced technical journal, for example, and will be eventually coming maybe a year, 2 years later into emerging economies because the libraries cannot afford the journals, etc. Today, that's not the case. Today, EBSCO, everybody is an EBSCO online library available at the same time. So that's the third major impact, which is going to change management education dramatically.
Thank you, Professor Jagdish. Um, Professor Atish, would you want to give the perspective that how students, because you interact with a lot of students, how is the world of upskilling changing from their perspective?
See, first of all, I think Professor Shade covered the most important three things: the whole issue of shelf life of knowledge, the impact of technology, and globalization. Now, the third important thing that is happening is the workforce is becoming multi-generational.
Right.
So, two important things which has happened is this, that because the life expectancy has gone up, hence the duration of work life, I mean, in terms of the time for which we actually work as an individual has gone up dramatically. And if we combine that with the fact that shelf life of knowledge has become reduced, there's an impact of technology, there's a need for continuous upskilling and reskilling.
Absolutely.
That's the key change which is happening today. And also there is a need that when we look at the workforce, how do we make the team work in a manner where the language system is reasonably uniform across team members, given that the workforce is multi-generation. And that is where I think this whole issue of reskilling and upskilling assumes significance.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Satish. Actually, if you look at the audience, most of them are nodding and commenting that yes, they agree. So largely it is, resonating with the audience as well. Now that, we see that there is definitely a change, that is happening. How,
can I just,
please, please
Ankit,
go ahead.
can I just
Yeah.
add on, I think Atish made an excellent point. There is no some such thing as getting my degree and then practicing that for the rest of my life. You have to be a lifelong learner or a student constantly. Degree may be just a sort of a marker, that's it pretty much. Unlike my days where, degree was the final terminal thing, you celebrated graduation, and now it's a question of applying the knowledge, whether you are an engineer or whether you are a humanity professor, a student, doesn't make any difference. That's not the case. Today, you have to be a student on an ongoing basis, so lifelong learning is very important.
Absolutely, Professor. Actually, the point that you made about the shelf life of any knowledge, which is roughly 18 to 24 months, is something, definitely calls out that every person has to go reskill, upskill in, approximately 2 years. So that's
Right.
so just wanted to take your opinion on what are the trends that are emerging in online management education specifically to accommodate the learning needs of these management professionals, because now that every 2 years they would want to learn something new. And with pandemic there are things which are changing. So do you see any trends or any patterns that are emerging in online management education?
I would ask Atish to start this.
Sure.
Atish is very much down to the reality. He would know more about this than I would know. I will add my comments later on if it's okay.
See the first of all, if given the fact that there is a need for continuous learning, okay, as again start and finish. Okay, so the important aspect today, I think the university education, up to university education, is about learning to learn, and then how do you continuously learn?
Yeah.
Now there are learning happens in in three steps, so to say. And I am going back to the scriptures a little bit. There are three aspects to it: Shravan, Manan, and Dhyan. Which means first part is the receiving of the knowledge. The second part, the Manan, is about reflection. And Dhyan is about application and internalization. Now, as you finish your degree and get into the workforce, and you have the major, almost 100% here who are already working when you did the poll. What happens here is that the doing part is already happening. What becomes important is to keep pace with the knowing part.
Yeah.
And when it comes to knowing, which is the Shravan part, okay, I think online is a very good way to make that knowledge piece happening. So when it comes to knowledge upgradation, I think online is a very good medium. The number two aspects, and you have got almost 32% of your audience, which is 10 plus years of experience. Now, as you grow up, lot of times there is a lot of inhibition when you are in a classroom setting with lot of other participants, because you are faced with a challenge which you cannot probably discuss in presence of everybody else. Now, technology allows in an online setting, better than an offline setting, to do one-to-one or small group interactions. So the group learning or peer learning, the reflection can happen in small groups when you work on projects which is directly related to your work, and at the same time you get the expertise in terms of knowledge. I think this change is something which I find is happening and is picking pace as we go forward.
No,
please go ahead, Jagdish sir.
Yeah, Ankit, no, I think Satish made an excellent point. The multi-generational workforce, I think, is a very important element. We need to think through all the consequences from a knowledge, learning, education, upskilling, reskilling. I will take a slightly broader picture also, coming to the same conclusion, why online may become more desirable platform, not like a cheap substitute, as people think about, but it may be a more appropriate platform. Because if you look at the learning, how it took place historically, before literacy came in place, people learned from each other by verbal communication. Voice was the mechanism. And there were three places where they learned from. Again, Natish says follow learning, reflection, application, or knowledge here. Well, first of all, they learned quite a lot the craft from some guild craft master who taught you how to be a goldsmith or ironsmith or whatever they did. Second place you learned was congregation. Before formal religions even came, there will be congregation, community get-togethers like panchayat in India, for example, where you learn from each other your social behavior. How do you behave properly in a group setting, in a community? And the third one was the community itself gave you norms about the family, the extended family. So I call it 3 C's of learning: craft, community, congregation. When the industrialization took place, we shifted to 3 R's of learning: reading, writing, arithmetic, that we all know. And our education even today is anchored to those 3 R's of learning, going beyond high school, even in higher education. To me, that's a problem. Because we take the knowledge designed around 3 R's of learning and put it online, it doesn't work very well. In a similar way that if I have a client server software legacy system and I extend it to the cell phone, it does not work. As opposed to starting the software with a cell phone working into the legacy system. In fact, all IT companies are struggling with that issue primarily. Okay, the same thing. So ultimately, if you are serious about online learning in a positive way as a superior mechanism, I think we have to have a new platform called 3 I's of learning. Learning should be interactive, which is what Atish just talked about. I can create smaller groups and they can work among themselves in a virtual world across the world, across cultures. As R&D guys work nowadays, engineering teams work all over the world. I mean, like 4,000 or 5,000 engineers from different disciplines. There's a Russian tradition, there's a German tradition of science, there's a Japanese tradition of science, American tradition of science, British, etc. All different scientists working together, as we are doing with COVID-19 problem right now, for example. So learning has to be interactive, and I think online provides much more cross-cultural and a diverse backgrounds in a science or a field of management. Accounting is not the same worldwide, for example. Finance is not the same worldwide in many ways. Marketing is not the same. So you can get multiple perspectives. So I very strongly believe that we have to think about a new paradigm or a pedagogy, which is how can we make online education interactive, like what we are doing right now, as we
Absolutely.
will do with the, right? The second element is very important. Again, online has an advantage over offline, surprisingly. More and more learning has to be integrated. There is something common between math and music. And we always have this notion that if you're a math major, you will be lousy in music or creative thinking. If you're a music major, cannot be a math major. We have these gender biases and all this stuff. It goes away in the online learning. Learning has to be integrated. I can integrate between math and music by simply saying both are languages. There's an architecture, there's a structure. And I can add so many languages. Software is a language. So suddenly it enables you to think more broadly. So second major I of learning in the digital world is called integration. I can integrate finance and accounting. I can integrate finance and marketing in the management field. I can integrate, which we need to do. And the last element is very key because it is called mass customization, or it's very individualized. Even in a classroom physically, 75, 80 students, you cannot provide individual attention. Here I can do it totally. In a large class of 1,000 people, even with proper organization, I can say You can go at a faster speed, you can go at a slower speed. For example, she or he needs an assistance in technical courses, for example. Well, we can come and help you. It's much more possible today. So interactive, integrated, individualized. Personalization is much more possible in the online than it is in the offline, which is why we have never understood, because by extending the knowledge as we have it, which is 3 hours of learning, into the online, it doesn't work well. Which is why in school system, or kids are not able to learn, because it's the same 3 hours of learning, rather than coming out with a pedagogy or an approach, a curriculum, in a way that emphasizes the 3 eyes of learning. I can go on forever, so I'll stop here, okay?
Yeah, thank you, Jagdish sir. Actually, I can totally relate to what you and Atish sir have, called out. So let's say there is a group wherein there is a person who's couple of years experience, and then there is a person who's say 15-year experience. I can totally relate to what Atish sir was saying, that how the behavior and the inhibitions would come into picture for any of those two. And when it comes to online, I can make a group and still run with it, and then give the individualized attention to different audience, catering to their different demand. Definitely something that is possible in the online world.
Right.
So this is where we are seeing the trends, and there are certain patterns that are emerging. But there is some feedback while we were doing the survey. We were trying to understand how the audience is looking at it. So from a perspective of comparison, how do online management education programs compare with the residential ones? And maybe I'll start off with Atish sir, because he's running both of them, and he will have the clear view, and then we can come back to you, sir.
Sure.
First of all, it is not conflicting. Both has its own place. Okay.
Yeah.
And I will start with the third aspect, which becomes very important when it comes to the issue of upskilling and reskilling, which is the individualization piece. When you are part of a cohort in a offline setting, the path is fixed, which means the curriculum is very structured and there is a fixated pathway. What online allows is to make the program bespoke.
Yeah.
Which means it can be self-paced.
Yep.
And very individualized. So online actually allows the issue of addressing how one can curate one's own pace, as well as what kind of courses that one would like to take, which means the curriculum can be individualized and the pace can also be individualized.
Yeah.
That I think is a challenge in the offline setting. Okay. And though Dr. Shashtrabuddhi is still not joined, but one thing, the way the regulation today is facilitating, the new education policy has come into force with the 2 notifications which has come out on as recent as 29th of July. One related to the credit bank, and second related to the multiple entry and exit. Now that actually suddenly creates a very different dimension when it comes to learning, which means one can curate and customize one's own curriculum across disciplines like maths and music can be combined, and based on one's own individualized pace. Now it is what happens is that different learners have different ways of learning. In an offline classroom setting, it is one size fits all type of a learning that happens. Whereas in an online setting, it can become far more individualized and the curriculum can actually become bespoke.
Good, very good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else? Atish, anything else? Come on, you have more things to say.
No, I think we would like to hear from you, sir. With the fact that now the new notification has come, there is you can bank your credit for 7 years,
Yeah.
and you can actually take credits across. So it can also happen, suppose in Jackson, part of the credit has been done online as a micro certification, and then you come for certain courses offline. You can combine online and offline credits to create an MBA of your own. I think that was never possible. So
Yeah.
if I have to look at a course on search engine optimization and social media analytics, probably the Simplilearn course is far more contemporary and up to date. But if I had to probably interact in a classroom setting with the faculty to learn consumer behavior, which is more broader discipline, I might come to the class. Okay.
Yeah.
So you can actually not just individualize your curriculum, but given the new notification, you can combine the way you want to and curate your curriculum. I think that's the biggest advantage which can happen.
Yeah.
So micro certifications and combining courses and create and curate a curriculum of one's own is today feasible and possible and is a reality.
Yeah.
Atish sir, actually, I was following the notification that you have just mentioned, and at least as a student, I go back, almost 8-10 years. I realized that yes, I never had a choice. I had to, take admission only at a certain date. I had to take a, exam only at a certain date, and I had to ensure that in that couple of years, I, complete my MBA. And otherwise, I would, have a backlog that will go to a third year and all those things. But now, the two options that have come, which is basically I can start anytime and ensure that I pick my own MBA. So based on the skills, and one of the audience member is calling it out that the skills should be acquired according to the trends that are there in the market and the business needs. So definitely something that a person could customize and ensure that the skills are there, the degree is there, and he or she is ready to hit the market with a new opportunity there.
Yep.
Jagdish,
Absolutely.
one specific point that I have now that you're associated with multiple schools globally, this trend specifically, does it vary by geography or is it largely similar, at least from India and US perspective? If
Which
you
one
have
again? Come again about the question. Multi?
So, no, I'm referring to Jagdish sir. Because he's associated with multiple, schools. So, is this trend specifically for India, or is it something which is, globally also there is a definite trend on adopting a lot of new online pieces to learn rather than being a physical classroom oriented? That's what I would want to hear from Jagdish sir.
Yeah. I think it's much more prevalent in emerging economies in general, where there just has not been a physical infrastructure to accommodate large numbers of people, to make education more affordable, accessible, with low price points, etc. I think it's just demand for higher education has gone exponentially in emerging economies. So that goes for China at one time, which is now middle economy, definitely India, Africa, Latin America, emerging economies in general. So more innovation is coming from emerging economies. Just like cellular telephones, while America, we invented here, we commercialized it and we lost it because we did not think about cellular telephone as a mass market. It was supposed to be business to business communication. When we designed it at that time, I was involved at that time. Our forecasts were so low. By the year 2000, with all the consultants, maximum forecast was 958,000 cell phone subscribers. That's a little off by a few billion, right? And if you look at the largest market is China and India, smartphones, India is even bigger now, rate of growth, for example. So I think we never understood. So leapfrogging in online education is more likely to happen from emerging economies. Just keep that. With education policy, the national education policy allowing the freedom will give more opportunities for online people. Second reason why it is not as popular as yet in America is that we have all the legacy systems in place. So we have a resistance to change. Not only resistance to change in the pedagogy itself, but the faculty is not willing quite often. Administration is not willing because things are working fine. And when they are working fine, why would you change? I have a book actually called The Self-Destructive Habits of Good Companies, or the new title is 7 Bad Habits of Good Companies. It's in 14 languages, and one of the key major bad habits of good companies is denial of new realities. They are either unable to change or unwilling to change. So if you look at all the great companies like Kodak at one time, or Sears Roebuck in retailing, mind-boggling, including some digital computer, for example. So many of these have resistance to change because they're locked into their systems, culture, paradigms, etc. So it's not coming along as quickly in advanced countries as it would be in emerging economies. There's a very strong belief in advanced countries, especially in the US, that education should be a non-profit business, period. All private universities, even though they are private, are really non-profit C corporations, as we call them in America, and also in India, Section 25 or Section 8, whatever we call it now, which means you cannot take the profit out for shareholders or investors, etc. It has to be replowed. All public universities, state universities are all. So I think that creates certain constraints in terms of the way to think about differently. So to me, I think advanced countries will lag behind. Now, there are certain areas where out of sheer necessity, you have to do it. And those are the areas where there's a huge shortage of students coming to the classroom, which is the first generation college students, in other words, born to families where they're the first one to go to college, for example, or vocational technical training or something like that. So we see upskilling in terms of vocational technical training taking off, online education. So if you look at the content on YouTube, if you look at the content on Coursera, even for that matter, it's much more toward vocational technical training. How to. MBA was designed not know how, but know why. What's the theory? What's the explanation? And that is key difference that's coming about that I see. So I think in advanced countries, there may be almost a reverse innovation, where emerging economy comes out with a formula, a success, which shows you can provide great education and at the same time be surplus, profitable, whatever word you would like, for profit or non-profit. And then the advanced country says, let me adapt and accommodate and localize to what we want to do. So surprisingly, excitement is more in emerging economies.
Got it. So these are actually, I talk to the top institutes like MIT, Harvard, and all that. What I have learned is that they are, yes, they are resistant, but they are more of laggards in adopting that, and they are slowly adopting. So they are seeing that all the other universities are coming up, and there are a lot, fewer students who are applying to those universities, be it US or be it from any part of the geography. So that is also something that they are seeing as a trend, and eventually they are opening up to the whole concept of doing online, because for the last couple of years, all their students who were residential candidates, they have studied online, and that has worked at least to some extent. So they are thinking of that as well. So that's also a trend.
And I do agree that at the same time, since we are more regulated by accreditation, especially in the US, accreditation bodies, different accreditations, management is ASCSB, but there are accreditations for the regional areas like Southeast Universities accreditation in humanities, etc. I think accreditation bodies are the ones, like the new act in India, Policy Act, has to trigger the change. So there's always worry about will the accreditation maintain if you go online, because online is considered inferior good, which is a fundamental problem. I think we have to make that as a superior good in the minds of the people, superior product. And that is the key difference to me. For whatever reason, because of the lower price, etc. A lot of debates are going on in the MBA program right now between top universities. And you see the difference at University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign campus, where they decided no full-time, daytime MBA because they cannot make it. The numbers are just not there. And they began to offer an online using Coursera. 5,000 students are taking typical MBA online degree program with 3 graduations. It's mind-boggling. Now ASCSB is inviting University of Illinois to tell other deans or executive or MBA programs that working professional is the market, not the starting, fresh graduates. It is a huge market. You appeal to them properly, design the curriculum, and pricing is not that different because it's the same as residential pricing. So you don't have to compromise on your prices. Even better experiments in America are by American Management Association, which is the largest training program for working professionals. And they used to have physical facilities like 50, 60 cities. They will have a hotel, within the hotel, a learning center they would have built in. People will come there. Fascinating. They decided to go online because of the COVID, but even before COVID, they charge the same price. And managers prefer to do online because they don't have to travel. The company says, why are you paying for your travel and hotel stay? It just goes on. So that's huge now. So I think more and more gaining respectability of online programs through accreditation would be very important. Can I add one more point?
Yeah, please.
If you look at the history of remote learning, this is really what it is all about. Way back when you had the diplomats studying abroad, you had a correspondence schools where you send the book out, you send the exam out, they wrote the exam, it came back, right? Of course, then you had a continuing education, college of continuous, university-wide created. We decided to use satellite some places even. We used to have distance learning by satellite from point A to point B, for example, or from the campus to a corporate building or something like that, Today, it's all online in the way we know it today. So there's a whole legacy we can understand as to how, if we use the word remote learning, and how remote learning history and what it took place, it has always coexisted. But today it is becoming very mainstream, and that's the key difference in my view. Can I add a couple more things on the question that you asked, Atish? Is that okay, Ankit?
Yeah, please.
Please carry on.
Yeah, I think that online and offline are not really competitors, but they are more complementary and coexisting in several ways. Or offline, which is the real brick and mortar residential program is the right word. It's really meant for young people to come on the campus to get value, shape, friendship, etc. It's more than just learning education. It's making you a mature human being away from the family, independent. Whether you go to IIT, for example, at the undergraduate level, or you go to engineering colleges away from home, or you go to IIMs. In the old days, as you know, right after your engineering, you immediately did your MBA or PGPDM. To me, that model needs to come back for residential programs. Young people, because on the campus, you learn a lot more about how to live together, how to eat food in a mess, how to volunteer yourself, which is not possible on the online. On the other hand, online is much better for working professionals. Taking time out to take a year off to go to the college, taking a career disruption, or taking time out to come to every evening to the campus, for example, after all day work, it's very tiring. Or even executive MBA programs will come on the weekends. So to me, for working professionals, online is a better model because you don't need to learn other skill sets. You already are a mature human being, probably married with a family. You need more time and space flexibility. I also think that what we teach in the regular PGDM programs is more about leadership, team building. Working professionals have already done that. Again, we need to think about what working professionals need, which is different. And so to me, what working professionals are going for education, degree or certificate, is for career enhancement. Residential is career starting point. My first job. How do I get my first job? And where do I go and apply? Here it is basically saying, I already have got my job. How do I get promotion? How do I move up in the corporate world? Pretty much either within the company or laterally some other place. I think that's key difference in my view. I also think that there's a third difference, that the online expands the market clearly. I mean, as every evidence shows. So when you have economies of scale problem, let's say in very hands-on courses like teaching classical music, which is, very much like a do it, right? In that case, you can accommodate only 15, 17 students in a classroom because you need the piano, you need the equipment. It's just a very expensive proposition. Or medical degrees the same way. Very expensive to start a medical school. Whereas online, the same music professors can have you learn the skill at your piano at home.
Absolutely.
We have evidence where courses by well-known music professors who are so world-class, when they offer the course live but goes online, they get from 15, 20 students to, would you imagine, 1,000 students.
Can totally
I know
relate.
people.
Jagdish sir, yeah, definitely something that yeah.
Right.
One more thing that you brought, very specifically, which is definitely insightful for people who are, already working, taking a break and, going back. I can, personally relate to that. I had taken a break, did a 2-year MBA, then came back. And I definitely
Right.
believe that it's tough. You have to, let go of your career, I'll say promotions that are coming your way. You have to take a detour and then come back and, take up the
Right.
whole different career path. So that's also another part that, plays very good for online. I have one specific question, which is, for all of us who are, listening to you. So, how can one make the best use of these online management programs to build, their career? So, what are the things that a person should look at? What are the things that, he or she should take care while taking up these online management programs? So, Atish sir, I'll start off with you, and then we'll come back to Jagdish sir.
I will come, typically to the Indian context on this.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think Professor Sheth mentioned a very important point that the offline campus-based program is for being outside your home for the first time, be part of a group, learn skills of team building, leadership, etc., and prepare for the first job. As
Right.
against an online program is about career enhancement. Now, typically in India, if you look at it, even the MBA programs are not essentially what an MBA program is like, because it is mostly for the freshers. So if you look at even the FT ranking, our top institutions, I'm not naming anybody, are in the MIM ranking and not in the MBA ranking. Essentially, the management institutions or business schools in India are preparing their graduates for the first job. So you get a levers to recruit as a management trainee or a task to recruit as a management trainee.
Right.
As against the way an MBA is recruited abroad.
Yep.
Now, there are two aspects. Somebody who is looking for the first job, probably offline campus-based MBA program is of good value. Now, this has happened, the rush for MBA has happened, to my mind, is because the undergraduate degree has not served the purpose the way it should have, at least in the Indian context. Okay. Now, with the emergence of new universities and the undergraduate programs becoming stronger, there will be a trend where the first job will be an outcome of the undergraduate degree and not necessarily an MBA. Now, once that happens, and that is already happening, okay, the investment that you do, and you just now said that you took a break, that investment that you do for an MBA degree from a top college is an opportunity cost, because if your first job is about 1 million INR, then for 2 years you have sacrificed 2 million INR plus another 2 million INR for the degree itself, because nothing is less than 2 million INR. Take the top IIMs or your, so which means there is a 4 million INR gone. I have sacrificed on my 2 years of advancement in my career, okay, in the same company. Now, if I compare that, and if I am using a very acceptable model, which is when we start in our career, we start with certain basic skills and as an individual contributor. As we go up, we become a team leader, then a functional manager, like that. Okay. Now the question is, you want us to decide when I need that inputs which are relevant managerial input for either career enhancement within or lateral. And to my mind, if somebody is already in profession, it makes a lot of sense if I pick and choose, curate my own curriculum and find out the best fit for my own career enhancement. And to my mind, for those kind of professionals who are already 2 to 3 years in a job and is not looking for the first job, it may be a lot of sense to do an online program. And if required, because everywhere there is a 30 days minimum on leave, and if required, with the new education policy, if there are master classes or a good faculty who is delivering a modular course, and most of the times we do that, top faculties come, teach us for 3 weeks like that. You come there and attend the class on campus with the same institution. I think that kind of model will emerge going forward. So it will not be a sacrifice of that 4 million which is happening today, but you continue to earn and learn, and at the same time, you individualize your own curriculum and create your own career path. I think that's the way forward.
Thank you, sir. I can totally relate to it. Jagdish sir, anything that you would want to add?
Yeah, I can add that in many ways, the online is a market expansion in general, because it gets into working professional market, which is really untapped in many ways. It's a much larger market than the fresh graduates. But there are ways that one can make online synergistic and a complementary. For example, if you have a 2-year PGPDM program or MBA program, you have all of these residential halls, everything locked up for 2 years. What if you say first year is just learning basics of business? I mean, it's all language, accounting language, marketing language. That's all we do in core classes. It's possible that I can take core classes online at home, and then market expands in the process. And then you come for your second year only on the campus. So you're reducing your cost of relocation, cost of, we have very expensive proposition, your staying cost essentially by and large. So you only do your MBA 2 year, but in a 1 year, for example, right? Our biggest headache in regular residential MBA program is diversity of students, because we allow, unlike in engineering, any background essentially. You have engineering students, you have humanities students, you have social science students, you have biochemistry, etc., etc. So how do you homogenize them? Because not all of them have same level of knowledge of calculus, for example, or any kind of software languages. Many of that remedial, as we call them, we do it on the campus right now, like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, they come ahead. That can be done online quite a lot. Most of that is how to, crank up the number, kind of. So when you come, I have basically standardized the students in terms of their fundamental knowledge before they come to the class, which makes the job of the instructor not to dilute toward the low end of the class distribution, but basically you have students who can be challenged to more and more what they can do. That's the second key thing that can happen. Also, as I mentioned earlier, this is a lifelong learning that says that as a part of the fees, interestingly, you already have You come residential program, you learn, you get your degree, but because your prepaid fee, and I've done some economics in my book actually, it's a massive revenue increase for the campuses, physical campuses, because I continue collecting. It's a prepaid subscription service.
Yeah.
And then you offer a variety of things that you pick and choose. So there's all kinds of interesting approaches to create a blending. We already do the blending right now in large classes. As you know, in America, our business schools are mostly driven by undergraduate programs. Every state university would have 5,000, 6,000 undergraduate business majors, which is where everything, all resources go toward them. So it's very possible, in fact, for example, that we can do the flipping the class. Right now, what we do is that you teach a master professor gives lectures 2 or 3 times in a hall of maybe 1,700 students at a time. I don't have to do that. Then we break them into laboratory, as we call lab, sessions where teaching assistants break them down. I can have those lectures online, or flipping the class as it is called. So I can have this very precious resource of a faculty who is brilliant in the way he can communicate to the large audiences, almost like being in a theater, like a performer essentially. They're very good performers. That talent is so rare, I can multiply a lot more by flipping the class. Because then that lecture he or she gives can go anytime, anywhere. It's asynchronous essentially. See? And then the laboratory work by class can be synchronous. So flipping the class is another. So there are many possibilities.
Yeah.
I think we just have to imagine more and take this attitude out that online is inferior, in person is superior. Once we remove that mindset, I think we'll see more opportunities for both of those programs.
Thank you, Jagdish sir. That was very insightful, and we definitely have a lot of learnings that we can go and implement on the online space. Before we move ahead, I have one poll question for our audience, and that is specifically for I'll display it on the screen, and maybe Stuart, you can put it up on the poll, which is what stops you from pursuing management education? You're not able to find a program with fully comprehensive curriculum. You don't have the practical exposure to become job ready. I mean, it could be what professors have mentioned, that pre-recorded videos are not helping out. You need an interaction property to move forward, or your work schedule doesn't allow you enough time for learning. So which stops you from pursuing the management education that we have talked about? Stuart, do we have time, or I think we would have got the poll results? One second, I will pull out the poll results. Yeah, so work schedule is major contributor, and then yes, difficult to learn from pre-recorded videos. So in that case, interactivity, as Professor mentioned, that is very, very crucial. Practical exposure, yes, definitely something required. And lastly, the program should be comprehensive to acquire the skills that are there. So definitely a mixed bag, but yeah, work schedule is something that comes on top. I will give a brief about the program that we are talking about, which is PGDM with Jackson, and I'll let you understand that, and if you have any questions, we can move from there. So just moving on to the program, a brief about Jackson. It's an AACSB accredited institute. Formerly was known as IFIM Business School, but now it is known as Jackson. The comprehensive curriculum, is aligned to the industry, demand that is there. We have case studies, hands-on project, and simulated tests for the practical experience. The classes would not be pre-recorded. It will be online live virtual classrooms with peer-to-peer interaction and instructor that would have one-on-one and one-to-many as well. And also it will be very flexible in terms of the schedule as well. Moving on to the benefits, you will be able to get a AICTE recognized and AACSB accredited PGDM certificate by Jackson. The fundamentals of management, marketing, economics, and something that you would be able to cover and ensure that you are able to apply in the real life business problems. One of the key things that I would want to call out is the program that is globally recognized. It's between 51 to 100 band globally for QS master ranking, which is in India it would be among the top few that's there. Specifically, you will have the best faculty from JAXOM, and you would also have a industry-oriented capstone project that you would want to choose. That's about the program that we are talking about. About the school, again, we called it out. There are only 15 B schools in India, including IIM Calcutta, which has this AA CSP accreditation, and that's something that you can definitely take as an advantage from the institute. Specifically, the PGDM is a one of a kind, program wherein it is online, wherein all the components of offline have been converted to online, and you are able to get the best out of this program in this sense. Specifically, one thing that I would want to call out: the curriculum is industry aligned, and you will be, job ready. There are other benefits that come out. So it starts from foundation, covers the core, and then there are practice credits, wherein you will be able to choose specializations like business analysis, digital marketing, data analytics, and operations, which will be specifically the supply chain 4.0. So if I talk about the new age skills that you would be able to acquire, it's something that you are already aware. This is something which is available or has a lot of demand in the market. Moving on to the specialization, you can choose among these four. And lastly, the boot camp that is more of an interactive learning rather than a pre-recorded, sessions that you would have will ensure that you acquire right skills for today's, roles that are there, be it in any field, whether it is business analysis, whether it is digital marketing, and so on. Lastly, I would want to call out that you would be able to get the PGDM diploma from JAXOM. It clearly is equivalent to what you see as an offline, because the program has been converted from an offline to an online setup. And lastly, Simplilearn certificates, in case somebody wants to talk about the specific skills that you have acquired throughout the programs, will also be provided. So that's about the program that would cover the demand that you had for online PGDM, which will give you the skill without leaving the work, without leaving any component that you have in life, but still acquiring the skills, which has again a shelf life of 18 to 24 months. So that's about the program that we have. Eligibility is very standard, that you have 10 plus 2 plus 3 or 10 plus 2 plus 4 recognized by Association of Indian University, a 50% aggregate in the 10th, 12th, and UG. And lastly, the enrollment and program schedule. We have one induction class scheduled for 21st August. You can look at it, and the cohort date, the learning date would start from 18 September. So if you wish to go ahead and enroll into this program, please reach out to us on askus@simplilearn.net. We will take your candidature and will ensure that if you are eligible, you get an admit into the program. With that, we do not have a time for Q&A. We have covered lastly whatever was being displayed on the chat box. So I would say thank you, Professor Jagdish. Thank you, Professor Atish, for taking time out and sharing your insights about the program, as well as management career in general. Stuart, over to you. And again, once specifically, thank you for the audience. You have displayed such a demeanor that we have been able to finish off right on time, as well as covered most of the aspects. Thank you, everyone. Stuart, over to you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ankit. Thank you, Dr. Sheth, Professor Patwade. And I do want to let everyone know that has submitted questions. I've logged all the questions. I'll make an effort to share those with the panelists after this session and see if we can get some maybe an answer sheet that we can circulate to some of the people. But we do thank you all for being here. Again, ask us at simplylearn.net is the best way to follow up and get your questions answered about the program. And thank you again. This ends our webinar.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you,
Really.
sir.
Yeah, enjoy it very much.
Thank you.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jagdish sir.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Jagdish
Thank-
sir. Bye-bye.